Chapter 2667. As soon as she finished speaking, she saw the two of them staring straight at her. She smiled and asked, "Why are you looking at me?" "Xiaojiu, you're very powerful, aren't you?" Just now, some fierce beasts saw them, but they turned around and ran away. Fengjiu must be very powerful, so those fierce beasts didn't dare to approach them. Fengjiu narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, "Of course, I've always been very powerful." "Then you should save Brother Gua. He's a good man." Xie Shixi looked at him expectantly, hoping that he would agree. Shi Yutang thought for a while and said, "Although the Guo family looked down on us and asked us to get out, Brother Gua is very kind to us. If possible, Xiaojiu, you should help him." Fengjiu ate the fruit and looked careless, but maybe they don't need us to meddle in their business. Besides, I don't like to get close to others. They asked us to get out. How can we go back? Well, no, I won't do it. She shook her head and walked forward. Xiaojiu. The two called him in unison and stopped him. "Why don't we go back and have a look? Didn't you say that you want to get some contract beasts back? Let's go there and have a look." Fengjiu glanced at the two of them when she heard this, and then she said, "All right." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and walked back. Seeing this, Xie Shixi couldn't help but be happy and quickly followed him. Fengjiu led them back. When they got close to the place, she took a deep breath and brought them up a big tree. She let them stand while hugging the branches. Then, she found a place to sit down and took out a fruit to eat, as if she was indifferent to the bloody and tragic scene in front of her. When the Xie siblings saw the scene in front of them, they couldn't help but exclaim. Xie Shixi covered her mouth, and her eyes widened in horror as she looked ahead. In front of them, dozens of ferocious beasts were ferociously attacking the Guo family. Some of them were the wolves that escaped last night, and some were other ferocious beasts. Among them, the ones that shocked them the most were the flaming lion and the snow-white wolf king. These two ferocious beasts had already reached the level of divine beasts. The members of the Guo clan were already injured, and now they were even more injured. Among them, many were bitten to death by the ferocious beasts. Those who were still alive were badly mutilated, as if they had just crawled up from a pile of corpses. They couldn't help but shudder at the sight. Their exclamations were covered by the screams and roars, and no one noticed that the three of them were watching. However, the two mythological beasts seemed to have sensed something and looked towards Fengjiu's direction. It was also at that moment that Guoxining, who was fighting with the mythological beasts, instinctively looked in the direction of the two mythological beasts. In the next moment, his eyes narrowed. He saw that on a big tree about 50 meters away, Fengjiu was sitting on the tree and eating a fruit, while the Xie siblings were standing on his left and right. When he saw him, it was as if he saw his savior, and he shouted, "Fengjiu, help!" Chapter 2668. However, as soon as his cry for help fell, he was knocked out by the Wolf King. At the same time, another wolf beast rushed forward to bite his neck. Seeing this scene, the Xie siblings exclaimed. Shi Yutang looked at Fengjiu, while Xie Shixi covered her eyes and did not dare to look at the bloody scene. She was afraid that if she opened her eyes, she would see the scene of Guoxining's neck being bitten off. The wounds on his body had been bleeding all the time, and the battle consumed a lot of physical strength. At this time, he was knocked out again. Before he could catch his breath, he saw a wolf beast rush up and bite his neck. The smell of death was so close, and despair enveloped him in an instant. Was he going to die? Was he going to die here? In an instant, thousands of thoughts flashed through his mind. In the end, they stopped at the moment when Fengjiu and the others turned around and left. If he had known, he would have begged them to stay. If they had stayed, would such a scene have not happened? Even though he was unwilling, even though he didn't want to die like this, his hand felt as heavy as 1,000 kilograms and he couldn't lift it. He raised his head and stared angrily and unwillingly at the wolf beast that was pouncing at him. Even if he died, he would drag this wolf beast down with him. However, just when he was determined to die, he heard a sharp sound in the air. With a whoosh, the wolf beast's head was hit at a speed that was too fast for him to cover his ears. Bang! With a bang, the wolf's head exploded in front of him. Brain matter and blood splattered out and covered his body. He stared blankly at the fallen wolf. Among the splattered brain matter, there was a fruit core stained with blood that fell to the ground. He killed a wolf head with a fruit core. Furthermore, he had accurately blasted the wolf beast's head from a distance of 50 meters away. Fengzhou, how powerful is he? He slowly turned his head and looked at the big tree where Fengzhou was sitting. He saw the young man in green sitting there leisurely, looking up at him. His cold and lazy voice traveled into his ears with a hint of insouciance. Actually, you shouldn't have asked me for help. I'm just an ignorant kid who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. People like me need your protection. How could he have the ability to save you? Hearing this, Guoxining smiled bitterly. He was indeed angry. When the Guo family disciples heard Fengzhou's voice, they glanced around and saw the 3 people on the tree. Their eyes widened. You're still alive. Yes, they thought that the 3 of them should have been bitten to death before the beasts attacked them. They didn't expect that the 3 of them were still alive and had come here to watch the show. When they thought of the sorry state they were in, the dead or injured, besieged by the beasts in despair, but the 3 of them were still standing on the tree, unharmed. This scene shocked and stunned them. We're alive and well, not like you, besieged by beasts. Fengzhou said leisurely as he leaned on the tree branch and watched the show. Chapter 2669. Fengzhou. He's actually back. And he's right there, but the beasts here didn't attack him. Instead, they consciously avoided him. If he didn't want to admit that Guoxining's words were right, then after seeing this scene, his insistence finally crumbled. Was he the one who harmed the Guo family? He was the one who put them in such a dangerous situation. It was him. He forced himself to stand up and looked at Fengzhou who was sitting on the tree. He held the sword in his hand and said, I've offended you, so I'll apologize to you with my death. Please don't hold a grudge against this lowly person and lend me a hand. With that, he placed the sword in his hand across his neck and reached out to wipe it. Uncle Son. Uncle Son. Everyone exclaimed, but because they were fighting the beasts, they couldn't stop him. Just as he was about to wipe his sword and commit suicide, a gust of wind swept past and struck his hand down. Clang! The sword in the middle-aged man's hand fell to the ground. He stared blankly at Fengzhou, only to feel that the hand holding the sword was numb and trembling slightly. Seeing this scene, Guoxining heaved a sigh of relief. The other Guo family members also relaxed. However, their hearts were filled with complicated feelings of shock. Why was it Fengzhou? A young man who was clearly not in their eyes. Could it be that in the end, he was the one who could save them? Why was it him? They thought about how they chased him away and spoke unkindly. Now that they wanted to ask for his help, they couldn't say a word. Fengzhou glanced at the middle-aged man and said to the Xie siblings, Aren't you looking for contracted beasts? Go down. That wolf and lion look pretty good. Aw. The 2 of them exclaimed, their faces full of astonishment, that's a divine beast. We can't beat it. Fengzhou tilted his head slightly and smiled, it's a divine beast. Since you want to form a contract, you naturally have to form a contract with a divine beast. As soon as she finished speaking, she waved her hand and sent the 2 of them in front of the 2 divine beasts. The Xie siblings cried out in alarm. When they landed on the ground, they saw that they were standing in front of a mythological beast. They were so scared that their faces turned pale, especially Xie Shirsi. When she saw a wolf king that was half a head taller than her and bared its fangs, her legs trembled. Fight! When Fengzhou's voice came out, it shook the hearts of the two. Their original fear was dispersed by Fengzhou's words. They clenched their fists tightly and roared as they rushed towards the mythological beast in front of them. Ah! Sha Yutang roared, his hands containing spiritual power slammed forward, but the flame lion in front of him easily avoided. The lion raised its head slightly and raised its chin, looking at Sha Yutang with contempt, but it didn't attack Sha Yutang, not because it was afraid of him, but because it was afraid of the human sitting in the tree. Sha Yutang approached step by step, and the lion also dodged. After dodging more than a dozen moves, it was a little annoyed. It glared at Sha Yutang, and the divine beast's coercion attacked Sha Yutang. Under its coercion, the human who had rushed up fell to the ground and could not stand up. It turned back angrily and stared at the boy sitting in the tree eating fruit, and a low and majestic voice came out with anger, "Human. What are you doing?" Chapter 2670. I'll find you a master. As Fengzhou spoke, he propped himself up on the tree branch and leaped forward. His green figure landed lightly on the ground. At the same time, he released his ancient aura. At that moment, the ferocious beasts that were attacking the Guo family members all howled and fell to the ground in fear, not daring to continue fighting. Ancient aura. The middle-aged man widened his eyes in shock, his heart trembling. Under the pervasive aura, he couldn't even stand still. His legs gave way and he fell to the ground. It was an ancient aura. It was an ancient aura. When the aura spread, not only the ferocious beasts, but even the Guo family members couldn't stand still. They were still in a state of shock when the aura dissipated. This was an ancient aura. If Uncle Sun hadn't said that it was an ancient aura, they wouldn't have known what this powerful aura was, but how could such a young man possess an ancient aura? Even if they didn't want to admit it, they had to admit that Fengzhou had saved them. Just one aura was enough to make the ferocious beasts fall to their knees. Guo Xining looked at Fengzhou with a complicated and shocked expression. He had guessed that Fengzhou was very powerful, but he didn't expect him to be this powerful. Ancient aura. No wonder he could faintly sense an aura last night, but he couldn't put his finger on it. It was an ancient aura. The Wolf King and Lion saw that the situation wasn't good and immediately prepared to leave. She released her aura and instantly stunned the two ferocious beasts. Under the powerful aura, even the two mythical beasts had to lie on the ground and tremble. "I'm just finding you a master, why are you running?" Fengzhou walked forward and stroked the Wolf King's silver-white fur. He turned back to look at the stunned Xie family siblings. "Which one do you like? Choose for yourself." These two mythical beasts. The brother and sister stared dumbfoundedly, their hearts thumping wildly. These were mythical beasts. Mythical beasts with shocking battle power. Were they going to be contracted beasts? Well, these two. Fengzhou touched the Wolf King's head, which made the Wolf King squint and look up at her. "I want the lion. This lion is so majestic. Its 4 feet are stepping on flames. I like it." Sha Yutang immediately rushed forward, but when he saw the lion's eyes, he was shocked. Fengzhou narrowed his eyes and glanced at the lion. The lion immediately wilted and said with slight dissatisfaction, "If you want to find a master for this king, why don't you find someone stronger? Is he worthy of being my master? With his strength? It's too shameful." Calm, Sha Yutang, shy. He was indeed weak. Strength can be improved. How old is he? There's still a long way to go. Feng Zhou said, motioning Sha Yutang to come forward. Seeing this, Sha Yutang bravely stepped forward and looked at the lion, saying, I will become very strong in the future. Hearing this, the lion looked at Sha Yutang in surprise. After thinking for a while, he looked at Feng Zhou, and finally lowered his head. Even if he didn't bow his head, he would be suppressed by this terrible human. The ancient aura of this human was so overwhelming that he couldn't resist. Chapter 2671. Seeing Sha Yutang reach out his hand and make a natal contract with the mythological beast, all the people present were envious of him. They envied him for being so lucky to know Feng Zhou and get his help to make a contract with such a powerful mythological beast. When Xie Shixi excitedly stepped forward, the silver wolf, which was enjoying Feng Zhou's touch, suddenly stood up. It opened its eyes and bared its sharp fangs. It let out a low growl and stared at Xie Shixi with a ferocious look. Its expression was as if it would pounce on her and tear her to pieces if she dared to take another step forward. Ah! Xie Shixi was shocked. She stepped back a few steps and fell to the ground, looking at the ferocious Wolf King with a frightened face. It's so scary. It's so scary. I don't want it. I don't want it. Xie Shixi shook her head and said. She got up and hid behind her brother. Hearing this, the Guo family members all breathed quickly. They looked at Feng Zhou and the Wolf King with bright eyes, as if they wanted to come forward and say, if I don't want it, I want it. However, no one dared to open their mouths about it. Little Shi, are you stupid? That's a mythological beast. No matter how unreliable Sha Yutang was, he knew that this mythological beast was hard to come by, especially when Feng Zhou was here to help them make a contract. If it were them, they would not be able to make a contract with a mythological beast. No, it's so fierce and scary. I'm so afraid of it. After all, Xie Shixi was a girl. Although she also liked pets, she felt that this mythological beast was too powerful. Its eyes were so scary that she did not dare to make a contract with it. Hearing Xie Shixi's words, the Wolf King narrowed its eyes and grinned like a human, showing its teeth. It looked at Feng Zhou and said directly, I want to be your contract beast. Hearing this, the lion, who had just been contracted by Sha Yutang, could not help but widen its eyes. You're asking for too much. No, I'm a lion. I dare not ask for it. How could it not know that the young man in Cyan was the most powerful one? It would be best if it recognized him as its master, but even it didn't dare to ask. This wolf actually dared to recommend itself. Feng Zhou was also slightly surprised. She looked at the Wolf King that was rubbing against her palm and could not help but laugh. You want to acknowledge me as your master? Yes, master, please accept me. The Wolf King immediately put away its ferocious and bloodthirsty side and squatted on the ground, its two front paws bowing in front of its body like a puppy trying to please her. Xie Shixi's eyes widened when she saw this. She couldn't believe that the ferocious Wolf King had such a side to him. Seeing this, Feng Zhou chuckled. It's just that I have too many contracted beasts. Master, I eat very little, and I will be very obedient. The Wolf King whimpered as it reached out a paw and gently placed it on Feng Zhou's hand, trying its best to please her. Roar! You're shameless. When the lion saw this scene, he was almost furious. How could he not know that this wolf was so shameless? Master! The Wolf King squatted on the ground and looked at Feng Zhou. Seeing this, Feng Zhou thought for a moment and said, all right. Follow me first. No, shrink a little. It's too big. As soon as she finished speaking, the Wolf King was overjoyed. It turned around and with a flash of light, it rushed to her like a puppy and hugged her feet tightly with its paws. Chapter 2672. At this moment, Guaxining helped the middle-aged man to his feet. He limped forward to Fingzhou, pushed away Guaxining who was supporting him, and knelt down with a thud. "Thank you for saving me." His voice was low and choked with sobs. If he had not appeared, if he had not intervened, none of them would have survived. He knelt down to admit his mistake and to express his gratitude. Seeing that the middle-aged man had knelt down, the Guo family disciples looked at each other and knelt down as well. "Thank you for saving us." "We're sorry," they said in unison. They sounded weak, and it was obvious that they did not have enough blood. That was to be expected. All of them were injured. It was already not easy for them to survive this battle. Fengzhou did not look at them. Instead, she said to the Xie siblings, "Let's go." With that, she turned and left. The Xie siblings hesitated for a moment and looked at Guaxining. Guaxining quickly stepped forward. "Fengzhou." He quickly walked in front of Fengzhou. Looking at the cold young man in front of him, he moved his lips and said in a hoarse voice, "Can you please stay and escort us to the teleportation array? If you leave, I'm afraid we won't be able to reach the teleportation array." With that, he lifted his robe and knelt down. "Please escort us." Seeing this, Fengzhou frowned. She looked at Guaxining, who was kneeling in front of her, and was silent for a long time before saying, "Get up." Hearing this, Guaxining looked up. "Do you agree? After we get out, I don't want to hear about what happened to me to be spread." Her voice was faint as she looked at Guaxining. Hearing this, Guaxining was slightly startled. Then, he said, "I know what to do. What happened here will not be mentioned outside." With that, he looked at the other Guo family disciples. Everyone understood what he meant and immediately spoke up to guarantee it. Seeing this, Fengzhou said, "Get up, all of you. Treat your wounds." She looked at the Wolf King at her feet and said, "Let the wolves disperse." "Yes, Master," the Wolf King replied. It raised its head and howled, causing the pack of wolves to run away. Those ferocious beasts also quickly fled, not daring to stay for long. The members of the Guo family could finally breathe a sigh of relief. They helped each other to the side to tend to their wounds. However, they didn't have any medicine to begin with. After being injured again, they could only use a simple cloth to tie their wounds. They didn't even apply any medicine. Fengzhou glanced at them and said to them, "Those who are lightly injured and still have the strength to walk, come with me." Then he asked Sha Yutang and the lion to stay and guard them. The crowd didn't know what he meant, but they didn't dare to ask. Only 4 or 5 people stood up and followed him into the forest. Xie Shixi and Guaxining walked beside Fengzhou. Xie Shixi couldn't help but ask curiously, "Xiaozhou, where are we going?" "Picking herbs," Fengzhou said, glancing around. Along the way, he bent down from time to time to pick a few inconspicuous herbs. Finally, he handed them to them. "Pick according to this and this." Only then did the crowd know that he took them to pick herbs. However, looking at the inconspicuous herbs, they were a little doubtful. Was it really useful? "Pick according to this. Just look around. Don't go too far," Guaxining said to the people behind him. "Yes." The few of them responded and then dispersed. Chapter 2673. "I know a thing or two," Fengzhou said and glanced at him. "Didn't I tell you before?" Guaxining's eyes flickered. He did, but no one believed him. Now, he couldn't help but feel a trace of anticipation. "Then can you treat the first elder's injury?" Fengzhou pursed her lips. "This isn't a matter of whether I can treat him or not, but whether I want to treat him or not. Hearing this, Guaxining pondered, then what will it take for you to be willing to treat him? That great elder of yours is a person who is about to die. Originally, I decided to treat him based on my mood. Now that you want me to treat him, you have to give me something of equivalent value. She looked at Guaxining and narrowed her eyes. Your first elder's life is precious, right? Hearing this, Guaxining nodded. Precious. He is a core member of our family. If he dies, it will be a great loss to our family. He paused for a moment, then said, Don't worry, as long as you save him, I can promise you that when we return to the family, we will reward you handsomely. Do I look like someone who lacks money? Fengjiu raised her eyebrows. Guaxining was stunned, then asked, Then what do you want? Let me think about it, then we'll talk about it. She walked forward and looked around. Then, she shouted, Little Sure, come over here and pick this too. After about half an hour, they came back, carrying a lot of herbs. The others didn't recognize these herbs, but when they saw them come back, they couldn't help but be surprised. There should be someone among you who knows medicine, right? Do you know how to deal with these things? Fengjiu asked, her gaze sweeping across the Guo family. I know. The middle-aged man hid his surprise and said to the Guo family disciples, Crush the herbs and apply them to the wound. These are herbs that stop bleeding and reduce inflammation. Hearing the middle-aged man's words, everyone immediately moved. Fengjiu, help the first elder take a look. Guaxining said. Seeing this, Fengjiu walked towards the unconscious old man. Although the old man was unconscious, he was still well protected by them. Evidently, the Guo family's disciples knew how important the old man was. Yutang, come and help. Fengjiu ordered Guaxining to take off the old man's shirt while he took out a small knife from his space. The middle-aged man limped to the side and watched. He watched as Fengjiu burned the sharp knife and removed the festering flesh bit by bit. Then, he took out some medicine and sprinkled it on the wound. Finally, he took out a pill and stuffed it into the first elder's mouth. What made him feel incredulous was that after a while, the originally unconscious great elder actually slowly woke up. Seeing this, he felt that it was extremely inconceivable. Great elder. Great elder. Great elder. One by one, they surrounded him, and when they saw that he had woken up, they all smiled in surprise. Chapter 2674. He looked hesitant and wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Fengjiu glanced at him and said, If you have something to say, say it. I want to ask you to help Uncle's son see if his leg can be cured. As he spoke, he looked back at the middle-aged man who was sitting under the tree with a pale face but was still enduring the pain. Uncle's son is actually a very good person. Although he is a foreigner, he is very loyal to our Guo family. He didn't mean to offend you before, but he didn't know and didn't dare to believe that you were protecting us. He tried his best to say good things for the middle-aged man, hoping that Fengjiu could help him see the wound on his leg. After all, the bite of the wolf was so deep that the bone could be seen. He had been holding on until now, so he didn't know if his leg could still be cured. Fengjiu glanced at him and followed his gaze to the middle-aged man under the tree. After thinking for a while, he stood up and walked over to him, saying, Cut the corner of your trousers. Guaxining, who followed him, quickly stepped forward and cut the corner of his trousers, revealing the wound that was so deep that the bone could be seen and blood was still oozing out. The rows of wolf teeth marks made him shudder involuntarily. The wolf had bitten so deeply that my leg is crippled, and it can't be healed. Before Zhang Xian could finish his words, Fengjiu spat a mouthful of wine onto his calf. The wine landed on his wound, and Zhang Xian cried out in pain, nearly fainting on the spot. Guaxining's heart was in his throat. The wound was painful, not to mention the wine sprayed on it. That kind of pain was worse than death, wasn't it? It was bitten by a wolf. It can't be disinfected without wine. She said lightly, put away the wine, and muttered, I wasted 2 mouthfuls of good wine. The middle-aged man didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but he didn't speak again. He just looked at the boy squatting beside him. Xiao Zhou, do you need my help? Sha Yutong came forward and asked. Well, clean the wound. Feng Zhou said as he prepared something. All right. Sha Yutong had been quite skilled in cleaning and bandaging people's wounds in the past 2 days. He immediately stepped forward to clean the middle-aged man's wound, but the blood kept flowing. He couldn't help looking back at Feng Zhou. The wound is still bleeding. What should I do? It's okay. I won't stay for long. As she spoke, she turned around with the threaded silver in her hand. She looked at the middle-aged man and said, the flesh on your leg was almost bitten off. I have to tie it up. It will hurt a little, so bear with it. Branch, bite it. Sha Yutong picked up a branch beside him and handed it to him to bite. The middle-aged man looked at the needle in Feng Zhou's hand and his heart skipped a beat. This needle. Was it sewn? Will this work? Feng Zhou glanced at him. Sure. Hearing this, the middle-aged man could only bite the branch and endure it. Wipe the blood when it comes out. Don't block the place where I'm stitching. She told Sha Yutong. Okay, I see. He responded, but he was also a little curious. How did the needle sew the flesh? Until he saw Feng Zhou sewing the bitten flesh with the needle and thread like sewing clothes, his heart trembled. It turned out that the sewing technique could be used like this. Chapter 2675. Guoxining was shocked to see Feng Zhou take the needle to close the wound that had been bitten open. He watched Feng Zhou tie a knot and the bleeding wound finally stopped. Guoxining couldn't help exhaling a sigh of relief, feeling incredible. I never knew that the embroidery needle could be used in this way. This is not an embroidery needle. Feng Zhou pursed his lips and smiled. This is a suture needle that I ordered specially. After dealing with the needle, she put it away and said to Guoxining, the thread of his calf can be broken in 7 days. Don't let him walk during this time, and don't let the wound worsen. Okay, I see. Guoxining nodded and looked after the middle-aged man. From time to time, he looked at the old man. Feng Zhou went to rest under the tree and looked at the wounded Guo family members sitting on the ground. His eyes flashed and he closed his eyes to rest. Sha Yutong came to him and saw that he was resting with his eyes closed. Knowing that he was not asleep, Sha Yutong said, Xiao Zhou, in fact, you have a good heart. Hearing this, Feng Zhou opened his eyes and glanced at him with a faint smile. I have a good heart. Yes. Sha Yutong nodded seriously and said, you are so powerful. If other people were as powerful as you, they wouldn't have saved the Guo family even if they didn't step on them. But you are different. You just saved them after venting your anger. This was different from many powerful people. His grandfather and father often told him that the more powerful a person was, the less he cared about the lives of the weak. A verbal conflict could kill people. However, after getting along with Feng Zhou, he felt that although he was unfathomable, he would not kill people cruelly at will, which was really much better than others. Hearing this, Feng Zhou smirked and glanced at the rest of the Guo clan members. That's because they didn't want to kill me. If they did, it would be different. After resting, the group continued on their journey. This time, no one dared to show any dissatisfaction or contempt towards Feng Zhou's group. Following Feng Zhou, the group passed through the forest and climbed over the mountains. It was only at noon the next day that they arrived at the Guo family's transmission array. It's here. As the old man spoke, he pointed at the place in front of them and looked at Fingzhou. This is the Guo family's teleportation array. Although his face was still pale, it was much better than yesterday. Perhaps because he knew of Fingzhou's methods, he treated Fingzhou with utmost respect, even though he was the Guo clan's grand elder. Let's split into 2 groups. Guo Xining said to Fingzhou. As long as we open the array, we can reach the transmission array at the back of the Guo clan's mountain. Fingzhou nodded and glanced at Xia Yutang. Put your lion into the contract space. Oh, okay. Xia Yutang responded and put the lion away. She looked at the wolf cub at her feet and saw that it was snow white all over and was squatting like a puppy. It opened its mouth and stuck out its tongue. She smiled and did not say anything else. The Grand Elder asked Guo Xining to open the transmission array and let some people enter it first. With a flash of light, the group of people disappeared in the array with the middle-aged man. Let's go. Guo Xining looked at Fingzhou and the others. Chapter 2676. In the Guo family, when the blood-stained Guo family members carried the pale middle-aged man back to the front yard of the Guo family, the entire Guo family was shaken, and the people in charge all rushed over. Hiss. Elder son, how did you get hurt so badly? An old man who was on good terms with the middle-aged man came forward and looked at the circle of bite marks on his calf. He couldn't help but gasp. I thought I wouldn't be able to see you again. The middle-aged man pulled the corners of his mouth and revealed a smile. He finally felt relieved after returning to the family. Finally, he was back at the family. He was safe. Quick, carry him to the backyard. I'll check your wounds. The old man said and called for the guards to replace the 2 injured disciples who were carrying Elder Sunday. Don't worry. I didn't die in there. I shouldn't die. Elder Sun smiled. His face was pale and weak. This injury made this man who was in his 60s but looked like he was in his 40s look a lot older. People who knew medicine paid attention to their own health, especially when he was considered the best in the Guo family. However, after this incident, he was exhausted. Did you encounter a herd of beasts? Why do your wounds look? The old man found it strange. These were bite marks from ferocious beasts. They were very obvious, but what surprised him was that such a large wound was sewn up with thread. What happened? Are the Great Elder and the others back? A middle-aged man strode in. This man was the head of the Guo family. When he heard that the people who entered the forest of 1,000 poisons had returned and were covered in wounds and blood, he immediately rushed over. Head of the family. Elder Sun called out weakly. He watched as the head of the family quickly came to his side. Elder Sun, how did you get hurt like this? The head of the Guo family was a little surprised. He thought that the Guo family's disciples were injured. He didn't expect that even Elder Sun was injured like this. Patriarch, it's not just me, the Great Elder is also seriously injured. This time, it's fortunate that. He paused when he saw that there were many people around, but he quickly changed the topic. The Great Elder and the others are coming later. Let's wait for the Great Elder to tell you about this matter. All right. You should return to the courtyard first. Your injuries need to be treated again. Patriarch Guo said. He then turned to the old man beside him and said, Go and take a look at him. Use the best medicine. You must cure Elder Sunday. Yes, Patriarch, don't worry. The old man said, then signaled for the 2 guards to carry him to the backyard. Greetings, Patriarch. At this moment, the Guo family disciples who were supporting each other bowed respectfully. Their clothes were tattered, and dried blood covered their bodies. There were bloodstains and stains on their faces. Their eyes were red, and their expressions were agitated. They came back alive. They came back alive. They thought that they would never be able to return to the Guo family and see their parents and relatives again. My son. How did you get hurt like this? How did you get hurt like this? A woman hurriedly ran over and threw herself into the arms of a Guo family's disciple who was covered in wounds. She cried and wailed, but then she seemed to come to her senses and hurriedly retreated, not daring to touch him for fear of touching his wounds. She was nervous and worried, but she didn't know where to start. Mother! 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 Chapter 2677. Another woman hurriedly pushed aside the guards blocking the way and quickly ran in. She pulled the injured Guo family disciples and looked for her son. Where's my son? Where's my son? Where's my Xianjie? Have you seen Xianjie? Where's Xianjie? The woman asked anxiously, pulling at the wounds on some of the disciples, causing them to gasp. Xianjie is dead. One of the Guo family disciples said, he's dead. When the woman heard this, she took a step back and widened her eyes in disbelief. Dead? How can this be? My Xianjie is such an outstanding child, how can he die? I don't believe it. He's dead, he's really dead. Another Guo clan disciple said. As soon as he finished speaking, the woman quickly stepped forward and grabbed him by the collar. Dead? Really dead? Why are you still alive? Why didn't you save him? Woo-woo. I don't believe it, I don't believe it. She pounded the disciple, causing him to scream. He felt the injuries on his body begin to hurt again. All right. Pull her away. When the Guo family head saw this, he frowned and ordered, can't you see that he's injured? How can you do this? The woman wailed as she was dragged away and sat on the ground. A middle-aged man who came from behind saw this and quickly went forward. When he found out that his son was dead, his face turned pale. However, he did not cry like the woman. Instead, he asked, how did he die? His gaze swept across the surviving disciples. His heart sank when he saw that all of them were seriously injured. First, we were attacked by a pack of wolves. Then, we were attacked by 2 divine beasts and dozens of other beasts. We were already injured, and under such circumstances, we could only fight to the death. Because of this, many of us died. Those who survived were all injured and on the verge of death. He glanced at the patriarch and the middle-aged man and said, not only that, Uncle's son's calf was bitten by the wolf beast and his entire leg was almost bitten off. Apart from that, there are countless injuries on his body. The great elder was seriously injured in order to repel the wolf king. His internal organs were damaged and his external injuries were infected. He almost lost his life. Hearing this, those who had not experienced this scene were shocked. How tragic must this scene be to cause so many people to be injured? How fierce was the battle that caused the lives of the great elder and uncle's son to be in danger? Quick! Send someone to the teleportation array at the back of the mountain to pick up great elder and the others. The patriarch reacted and hurriedly sent someone to pick them up. The middle-aged man was silent for a while before asking, 2 divine beasts and dozens of vicious beasts attacked. How did you survive? When the older man heard this, his heart trembled slightly. He sighed inwardly, as expected of a member of the clan, he hit the nail on the head. However, although they all knew about this matter, they couldn't casually speak of it. Therefore, he paused for a moment and said, the Grand Elder and the others will tell the Patriarch about this matter in detail. As soon as his voice fell, he no longer spoke. Chapter 2678. Patriarch, the first elder greeted. Just as he was about to salute, Patriarch Gua had already stepped forward to support him. First elder is injured, there's no need for such formalities. Patriarch Guo said as he looked at the Guo family disciples supporting each other. It's good that you're back. All of you go back to rest and treat your injuries. Everyone nodded and supported each other as they left. Only the great elder, Feng Zhou, and the Xia siblings remained. The crying woman had already been helped back to the courtyard by the middle-aged man. At this moment, he looked at Feng Zhou and the others and asked, "May I know who these people are?" Cough, cough, cough. First elder coughed lightly. Patriarch Guo saw this and said, "First elder, go back to the courtyard and rest. I'll have someone treat your injuries. We'll talk about the rest later." Okay. First elder nodded and said to Patriarch Guo, "Please take good care of these three people." Patriarch Guo's heart shook when he heard this. He looked at Feng Zhou and the other two and said to First elder, "Rest assured, First elder." Hearing this, the first elder nodded to Feng Zhou and the other two, then he was supported by the two guards and returned to the courtyard. Guo Xining stood at the side and said, "Father, I'll bring them to rest first." Okay, go ahead. Patriarch Guo replied. He looked at Feng Zhou and the Xia siblings and said with a smile, "The three of you can stay in my residence and have a good rest. If there's anything you need, just let the servants know." Many thanks, Patriarch Guo. The three said and left with Guo Xining. The middle-aged man frowned and stepped forward to ask, "Patriarch, you didn't even ask who these three people are, why did you let them go?" Patriarch Guo glanced at him and said, "Since First Elder told us to treat them with respect, there must be a reason. As for the reason, let's wait for First Elder and Elder Son to rest before asking." The middle-aged man clenched his fists and nodded before turning to leave. Patriarch Guo looked at him and sighed softly in his heart. Who would have thought that they would lose several Guo family disciples on this trip? However, the world was changeable and the Great Tao was ruthless. The road of cultivation was not easy to walk. Who knew what would happen tomorrow? Guo Xining took the three of them to a courtyard and said, "You can live in this courtyard first. There are several rooms here. If you live together, you can take care of each other. If there's anything else, you can ask the servants. I'll come to find you later." Okay. Feng Zhou nodded to leave. How long? Hearing this, Feng He looked at Shai Yutang and said, "Go and find out how far it is from here to the city where your family is. In addition, help me get water ready. I want to take a bath." Okay. Shai Yutang answered. He told his sister and walked out of the yard. Because Feng Zhou had been protecting them all the way, and Feng Zhou had helped him contract as contract beast, Feng Zhou's status had long been different in his heart. Therefore, he didn't feel that there was anything wrong with being ordered around by him. Instead, he felt that it was natural for him to do so. "Little thing, come here." Feng Zhou sat down at the stone table in the courtyard and called the silver wolf that was wandering around. Chapter 2679. This name. She held her chin and thought for a while. Old White has a name, Little White also has a name, as for you. She stroked its silvery white fur and suddenly grinned, "You're a silver wolf, so I'll call you Silver." Silver, Silver. It was still thinking about what kind of majestic and domineering voice its master could give it. Who knew that she gave it such a tacky name? How short was its master on earth? Puff! Xie Shirsi on one side laughed when she heard the name, Silver. He, this name is good. Silver, Silver, how nice it sounds. It's a pity that I can't spend this silver. Master, how about changing it? It lay down and pulled Feng Zhou's clothes with its claws. Just call it Silver. Also, don't talk, so as not to scare people. Feng Zhou told it. Seeing the maidservant not far away carrying water in, she stood up and said to Xia Shirsi, "I'll go back to my room first. Don't run around." "Well, I know," Xia Shirsi responded. She walked to the room and stretched her waist. "I also want to go back and lie down. I haven't had a good rest these 2 days. I'm exhausted." After the maidservant prepared the water for the bath, Feng 9 went in. Silver Wolf was about to follow her, but she let the maidservant close the door. "Guard the door. No one is allowed to come in without my order." Hearing this, the Silver Wolf looked up at her and whimpered in response. Then, it squatted by the door and guarded it. It hadn't been contracted by its master yet. It must perform well and strive to contract with its master as soon as possible. In the room, Fengjiu closed her eyes comfortably in the bathtub. She closed her eyes to rest and let her body soak in the hot water. As soon as she relaxed, she fell asleep inadvertently. After a long time, Xia Yutang's voice came from outside. "Xiaozhou, Xiaozhou." She opened her eyes in the bathtub and felt that the water in the bathtub was cold. She got up and dried the water on her body. She took out a set of green clothes to put on, dried her black hair, and simply tied it up. Then she opened the door and went out. "Xiaozhou, I know where we are." When Xia Yutang saw him come out, he quickly stepped forward and said, "This place is neither close nor far from my home. If we go back by sword, we should be able to get home in 1 day." Fengjiu nodded. "If that's the case, let's have a good rest today. We'll leave tomorrow." "Okay." Xia Yutang replied, "Then I'll take a bath first." Fengjiu nodded and returned to the room. The Silver Wolf was still guarding outside the room. After entering the room, Fengjiu didn't rest. Instead, he flashed into the space to cultivate. On the other side, Guaxining had just walked out of his room after bathing and treating his wounds when he saw his father sitting in the courtyard. Seeing this, he paused for a moment before walking up to him. "Father. Ning, how are your injuries? Is it important?" Patriarch Gua asked. Looking at his second son, he felt that his son seemed to have calmed down a lot after going out for a while. "It's all right. Don't worry, father," Guaxining said. He came to the table in the courtyard and sat down. He asked, "Father, do you have something to ask me?" "Yes." Patriarch Gua nodded. Chapter 2680. Guaxining paused for a moment, as if he was thinking about how to talk about this matter. After a long time, he said, "Father, 2 of the 3 people today are the Xie siblings, and one of them is Fengjiu. We met them in the forest. They said they got lost after being separated from their family." Hearing this, Patriarch Gua was slightly stunned. "Oh. People from the Xie family. Which Xie family?" The strength of the 3 people seems to be in the foundation establishment stage. What kind of family would allow such a powerful disciple to go to that place to gain experience? Hearing his father's words, Guaxining couldn't help but smile bitterly. It seemed that even his father couldn't see through Fengjiu's strength. Even his father couldn't see through Fengjiu's strength. How powerful was Fengjiu? "I don't know which Xia family they are from, because we didn't ask them where they came from. So, they begged you to take them out." Patriarch Guo looked at his son and asked, "Is this matter related to them?" He noticed that the Guo family's disciples were all injured, but the 3 people looked full of spirit and didn't seem to be injured. Guaxining shook his head. "It's a bit complicated. At first, they just asked us how to get out of the forest. In the end, Xia Yutang and the others just asked how to get out of the forest, but he invited them to go with him. They went with us, and it was quite peaceful along the way. Even if they occasionally encountered a few fierce beasts, they were no match for us at all." Until we were attacked by a pack of wolves. Speaking of this, his expression was complicated. There were dozens of wolves in the pack, and many of them were at the holy beast level. Especially the Wolf King, which was at the divine beast level. In order to repel the wolves, First Elder and Uncle's son fought against the Wolf King. In the end, both of them came back with injuries, especially First Elder. Everyone was injured in this battle. Moreover, their injuries were not light. However, Feng Jiao and the Xie siblings were not injured in this battle. Hearing this, Patriarch Guo looked dignified and surprised. Even you were injured, how could the three of them not be injured? What's the reason? Yes. Even we are injured, but the three of them are not injured at all. Who would believe that? He muttered with a bitter smile. I asked them that time, and they said that it was because of our Guo family's disciples that they weren't injured. Hearing this, Patriarch Guo furrowed his brows and said without thinking, the Guo family's disciples can't even protect themselves, so why would they protect them? Impossible. Father, you're right. He looked at his father and said, if I could see this clearly at that time, I reckon that later things wouldn't have happened. And then, as Patriarch Guo listened to him talk about this matter, he felt as if his heart had been lifted and then relaxed. Even he couldn't guess what had happened inside. Guo Xining did not tell him what happened after that. He only said, Father, at that time, we were heavily injured and it was late at night, so we did not leave after being attacked by the wolves. Instead, we were resting. What? Family head Guo was shocked. After the battle, the stench of blood is so thick, why didn't you leave? The smell of blood must have attracted the ferocious beasts to attack you in the middle of the night. That's why your team suffered such heavy casualties, right? Chapter 2681. Wrong. Patriarch Guo was stunned and didn't know how to react. Yes, wrong. That night, even though the smell of blood was very strong, not a single beast came near. The latter half of the night was very peaceful, and everyone rested for the night. That's impossible. Patriarch Guo stood up, clasped his hands behind his back and said, let's not talk about the night. Even during the day, in that kind of place, the smell of blood would have attracted the beasts. That night, you didn't leave, so how could not a single beast come near you? This doesn't make sense. Patriarch Guo said, stomping his feet in the courtyard. Suddenly, as if he thought of something, he stopped and looked back at Guo Xining, asking, that night, did you send anyone to patrol? Who was the one patrolling? Hearing this, Guo Xining admired him from the bottom of his heart. No wonder his father could control the entire Guo clan, and become the patriarch of the Guo clan. His ability to see through things was truly unmatched. It was me and Feng Jiao. At this point, he believed that with his father's wisdom, he must have thought of the reason. The wolf pack attacked and you didn't get hurt at all. That night, you didn't leave and were patrolling. An idea formed in his heart. He looked at him in disbelief. Was it Feng Jiao? Was it because of Feng Jiao that the beasts didn't dare to come near you that night? Is that possible? His strength. His voice paused, and he hesitated. That green-robed youth's strength was really only in the foundational level. Impossible. If he was in the foundational level, how could he protect the Xie siblings? How could he be safe and sound in that dangerous situation? Yes, it was because of Feng Jiao. Unfortunately, at that time, none of us knew. He sighed and said, not only did we not know that he was the one who protected us from the attacks of the ferocious beasts, our Guo clan's disciples even insulted him because we were injured while he was uninjured. In the end, we even told him to scram. Patriarch Guo was stunned and shocked. He didn't know what to say. He just listened as Patriarch Guo recounted everything that had happened. In the end, Patriarch Guo could only shake his head and sigh, you guys. If he hadn't come back to save us in the end, I'm afraid we wouldn't have made it back alive. Guaxining said. Hearing this, Patriarch Guo glanced at him and said in a deep voice, "That's because you guys only spoke contemptuously and did not take him seriously. If you wanted to kill him, I reckon that he would have killed you even before the beasts attacked." As someone who had been in a high position for a long time, he could more or less guess the other party's thoughts. Even if it were him, if they had the intention to kill, he would not have shown any mercy. At that time, Great Elder's life was hanging by a thread. I promised him that as long as he saved Great Elder's life, I would give him something to thank him when I returned to the clan. It's just that. He looked at his father. I don't know what to give him. Since that's the case, I'll make the necessary arrangements. Patriarch Guo paused for a moment before continuing, since he said that he doesn't want to show off, let's keep a low profile tonight. Don't be too noisy. Father, I don't think he will attend the banquet. Guaxining said. Not participating. Yes, and they won't stay in our residence for long. They should be in a hurry to go back. Chapter 2682. Okay, I see. Guaxining nodded and sent his father away. After looking at the sky, he went to his room to rest for a while and planned to go there later. As the sky was getting dark, the lights in Guo's mansion were lit up, illuminating the whole mansion. Guaxining came to the courtyard where Fingzhou and others were resting. As soon as he entered the courtyard, he didn't see anyone. He only saw the shrunken silver wolf sitting at the door. Seeing him coming, the wolf glanced at him sharply. Fingzhou. He stopped and called, but he didn't go inside. Fingzhou. Hearing no response, he called again. At this time, the doors of the two rooms next to him opened, and the siblings of the Xie family came out, rubbing their eyes sleepily. Brother Guo. What's the matter? Shai Yutang asked with a yawn, rubbing his eyes and walking towards him. Xie Shirsi also walked over and called out to the maidservant standing guard outside the courtyard, "Serve us tea. It would be best if you could bring a few fruits as well." After the maidservant responded, she left first. Did you have a good rest? Guaxining looked at them and asked. Not bad. I just woke up not long after I fell asleep. Shai Yutang said and asked, Brother Guo, are you looking for Xiaozhou? He's probably still sleeping. It doesn't matter. I can wait for him here. He sat down at the table and motioned for them to sit down. He said, My father is holding a banquet tonight and invites you to join him. Hearing this, they looked at each other and said, We have to ask Xiaozhou if he wants to go. It doesn't matter. I'll ask him later. He smiled and said, It's rare for you to come to my house. You should stay here for a few more days and let me do my best as a host. Well. Shai Yutang hesitated and said, I inquired about the distance from this city to my house. When I came back, I told Xiaozhou. He said that we would leave tomorrow. Maybe we can't stay here for a long time. Leave tomorrow. In such a hurry. Guaxining was slightly surprised. Yes. We've been away from home for a few days. Our parents must be worried. Now that we're out, we naturally have to go back as soon as possible. Guaxining nodded. When they were in the forest, they had already told him that they didn't really get lost. Instead, they accidentally entered the teleportation formation and appeared in the forest. It was also because of this that their families didn't know if they were safe. The door creaked open, and a refreshed Fingzhou walked out of the room. What are you talking about? Xiaozhou, Big Brother Guo said that they're having a banquet tonight and invited us over, Guo Yutang said. No, we'll go out for a walk tonight and then come back early to rest so that we can set off tomorrow. Fingzhou said and sat down at the table. At this time, the maidservant outside served tea and fruits before respectfully leaving. Seeing this, Guaxining said, I've already told my father about this matter. As for the Grand Elder's reward, my father will personally prepare it. Well, Fengjiu responded with a little carelessness. I'm familiar with the city. Since you want to go out for a walk, why don't I accompany you? He suggested. Well, Xia Yutang and Xia Yutang looked at Fengjiu. Thank you, Fengjiu said and didn't refuse. Chapter 2683. After chatting for a while, Guaxining led them outside. Before leaving, he told the housekeeper to inform his father and then left the house. Under the night sky, lanterns were hung high in front of the doors. It was a beautiful sight. People came and went on the streets. Some young men and women were playing together, and some children were playing. Both sides of the street were constantly shouting and hawking. It was a lively and bustling scene. Brother, it's so lively here. It's even livelier than where we are. Xia Shirsi happily held her brother's hand and looked around with a smile. Suddenly, she saw some small things in front of her and immediately ran towards them. What is this? She saw a stall with eggs of different colors. She picked one up and looked at it curiously. Ha, ha, young lady, these are pet eggs. Do you like one? The middle-aged man of the stall sized up the girl in front of him. She was dressed well and he knew that she could afford pet eggs. The smile on his face deepened and he explained to her enthusiastically. As long as you feed the pet with spirit energy every day, it will break out of its shell after a period of time. These little pets are small and cute. Women like them the most. These are pet eggs. What kind of pet beasts were there? What do they look like? The shells of these eggs are colorful and the patterns are different. Will the pets inside be the same? These are all low-level pets. They don't have much fighting ability, but they are cute. They are also obedient and will chat with their masters. As for what kind of pets they will be, well, it's hard to say. But one thing is for sure. No matter what kind of pets they are, they will be very cute and lovable. The stall was trying hard to promote. Also, this pet egg is not expensive for young lady. You can buy one and watch it come out. It will be fun. Xia Shirsi was tempted. She couldn't help but ask, how much? We don't take money. We only take crystals. One pet egg is 50 crystals, the stall owner said with a smile. Hearing this, Xia Shirsi couldn't help but turn around. Seeing her brother and Fengjiu walking over, she quickly stepped forward. Brother, I want a pet egg, but I don't have any crystals. Shai Yutang scratched his head and said, I don't have crystal stones either. He looked at Fengjiu and asked, do you have crystal stones? I'll get Mom and Dad to give it to you when we get back. I have it. I'll pay for it, Guaxining said with a smile. He stepped forward to take out the crystal stones, but was stopped by Shai Yutang. No, how is that possible? As Shai Yutang spoke, he pulled Fengjiu aside and whispered, my sister is interested in him. If she takes the pet eggs he bought, she will be in trouble in the future. You pay for Xiao Shi first. I'll pay you double. Fengjiu couldn't help but laugh. She glanced at him and said, just one pet egg. She smiled and took out a cosmos sack from her space and handed it to him. Take it. There are a lot of crystals in it. It's enough for you to spend. Hey, thank you. I know you are loyal. However, He still didn't know what the relationship between Fengzhou and the Xie family was. He only knew that Fengzhou was living in the Xie family. Chapter 2685. Guoxining ordered a few dishes and some wine. They sat around, but he didn't know what to say for a while. When he first met them in the forest, he felt that the three of them were weak. He helped them as much as he could and got along with them in a way to take care of them. But later, he found that their strength was unfathomable. Now, even though he was an outstanding child of the Guo family, he didn't dare to be arrogant in front of Fengzhou. On the contrary, even if they were peers, it was a little too far, not to mention casually joking with him like the Xie siblings. The scenery here is so good. Xiao Zhou, looking from a high place, don't those lights look like stars? Xie Shirsi asked with a smile. She leaned on the railing and looked at the night view in the distance excitedly. Well, looking down from a high place, the scenery is not ordinary. Fengzhou nodded slightly and said. Hearing this, Guoxining's gaze fell on him. He saw that his expression was indifferent, and there was a smile on his ordinary face. Looking at his unremarkable appearance, Guoxining suddenly had a thought. This might not be his real appearance. How could an unfathomable expert like him have such an ordinary appearance? For a moment, he was lost in thought and stared straight at Fengzhou until he turned to look at him with raised eyebrows. Is there something on my face? Fengzhou asked, picking up the wine glass in front of him and playing with it. I'm just suddenly wondering if this face of yours isn't your original face. Guoxining said this sentence unexpectedly, and then he was slightly stunned and felt a little offensive, so he said, sorry. Fengzhou was also stunned, and then he chuckled. He didn't speak, just shook the glass in his hand and took a sip of wine. Shai Yutang, who was next to him, couldn't help but look at Fengzhou's face suspiciously. He stared at it for a long time and said, this face is so natural. How can it be fake? Moreover, there is no trace of disguise. Then he looked at Guoxining and asked strangely, Brother Guo, why do you think so? Listening to Shai Yutang's words, Fengzhou's mouth twitched. This silly boy, if it was easy for him to see through her, would she still be able to survive? Xiao Zhou originally looked like this. Xie Shirsi, who had been lying on the railing, also turned around and said, when we met him, he looked like this. Although he was not very good looking, he looked good after a long time. When they first met him, he gave them the impression that he was a simple and honest young man. Even after he came to the Xie family, he gave them the impression that he was a man of few words. If they didn't look for him, they might not even see him for a day. However, ever since they fell into the forest, she felt that Fengzhou seemed to have changed into a different person. If he hadn't been with them all the time, she would have suspected that someone had switched him. Otherwise, how could he suddenly become so powerful? Listening to their words, Fengzhou was a little speechless. Didn't she look good? This appearance was incomparable to her original appearance, but it was still delicate and handsome. Compared to the appearances of the young masters of the aristocratic families that they were used to seeing, it was naturally slightly inferior. But no matter what, they wouldn't say that it wasn't good looking, right? Chapter 2686. In fact, you are much better looking than the people on the street. Of course, you are a little inferior to us. Shai Yutang said, but as soon as he said this, he felt that something was wrong. When he was about to say it again, he heard Guoxining next to him couldn't help laughing. Sorry, I can't help it. He still said with a smile. Looking at Fengzhou's helpless face, he finally understood why he cared so much about Xie's brother and sister. The brother and sister did not change because of his strength, and they still got along with each other casually. Perhaps it was this casualness and naturalness that made Fingzhou treat them differently. In fact, I didn't mean that. I mean, how can I say it? He was not good at words and didn't know how to say it. Well, I know what you mean. Don't say it. Let's eat something. The dishes are going to be cold. Fingzhou gestured, lifted the wine pot and poured himself another glass of wine. Then he saw Shy Yutang's wine glass was pushed over. She looked at him and saw his shy face. I want a drink, too. How about your alcohol tolerance? Can you drink? She remembered that they drank fruit wine at the banquet of the Ruan family, not this wine. Yes. Of course, I can drink. I am a man. He said with his chest out. Mother said that you can't drink outside. Xie Shixi said and added, even if you drink, you can only taste it. Don't drink too much. Otherwise, you will get into trouble outside if you get drunk. Fengzhou nodded. Well, that's reasonable. Let's have a drink. Don't drink too much. She poured him a glass and let him taste the wine. Shy Yutang grinned. One glass is okay. Guoxining smiled and put a piece of meat in Fengzhou's bowl. Try it. These are the signature dishes here. They also have some pastries. After eating, you can order some pastries to try. Thank you, Fengzhou said and began to eat. They ate and chatted as they enjoyed the night view. After the meal, several plates of pastries were served. After tasting the pastries, Guoshixi couldn't help but say, these pastries are delicious. I'll bring some back for father and mother to eat. Guoxining saw that Fengzhou also seemed to like to eat pastries, so he said, since you're leaving tomorrow, I'll go back and tell them to make them for you tomorrow morning. It's fresher and tastes better that way. That's great. Thank you, Brother Guo. Xie Shixi thanked him with a smile. You're welcome, it's just some pastries. He glanced at Fengzhou and said, you still have to hurry on with your journey tomorrow. Don't stay up too late tonight. Go back and rest early. Okay. Fengzhou nodded. Seeing that they were almost done eating, he prepared to leave. Guoxining let them go first while he went to pay the bill and ordered some pastries. Xie Shixi, who went downstairs first, was hit by a man who smelled of alcohol when she went downstairs. Her figure swayed and she fell down the stairs. Ah! She exclaimed and lost her balance. Sister! Shy Yutang reached out to pull her but failed. Fortunately, Fengzhou next to him reached out and pulled her quickly, so she didn't fall down the stairs. Oh! I was scared to death. Chapter 2687. You were the one who bumped into me, Xie Shixi said softly. Oh, it turns out to be a little beauty. The man who reeked of alcohol took a closer look and saw Xie Shixi's outstanding appearance. He couldn't help but reveal his admiration. He squinted his eyes and sized her up. From her tender and delicate face to her slightly perky chest and slender waist, no matter how he looked at her, she was a little beauty. Drunkenly, he supported himself on the stairs and steadily took a step forward. He reached out his hand to lift the little beauty's chin. Come, accompany this young master upstairs for a drink. However, before his hand could touch the beauty, it was slapped away by another hand. Paw! Shy Yutang stood in front of Xie Shixi and slapped the man's hand down. He shouted, what are you doing? The man was slapped by Shy Yutang and only felt a burning pain in his hand. He frowned and squinted at him with a pair of drunk eyes. Seeing that he was just a foundation establishment cultivator, he sneered. As soon as he finished laughing, he directly punched Shy Yutang without saying a word. The punch was full of hidden strength and strength. In particular, the man's cultivation was higher than Sha Yutang's, so Sha Yutang had no chance to react. Even if he wanted to avoid it, he couldn't avoid the blow under the great disparity in strength. Guaxining, who came down after paying the bill, saw this scene and couldn't help narrowing his eyes. When he was about to stop it, he saw Fingzhou, who was standing on the side, suddenly stretched out his foot and kicked out directly. The unexpected kick directly kicked the man who was standing at the bottom of the stairs down the stairs and directly rolled down the stairs to the first floor. The sound of rolling down the stairs was accompanied by a cry of pain. It was not until he rolled to the ground of the first floor that the sound stopped. Hiss! The man who rolled down the stairs took a breath and felt that his bones were falling apart. He raised his hand but found that he couldn't use his strength. It hurt so much when he pulled it slightly. Broken. The man was a little dumbfounded. Even his 70% drunkenness had sobered up a little. It was as if he couldn't believe that someone dared to kick him, and even made him roll down the stairs and break his hand. Fengzhou and the others walked down the stairs. Behind them, Guaxining let out a light sigh and quickly followed. When the people on the first floor saw this, they also turned their heads to look. Only people with status could go up to the second floor and above. He didn't know if these people were from the second or third floor, but judging from their clothes and bearing, they should also be from aristocratic families. However, these three people's strength was a bit weak, they were only at the foundation establishment stage. The person behind them, however, looked a bit familiar. "Young Masterly, are you all right?" The waiter hurriedly went forward to help the man who had fallen to the ground. "I'm fine. Do I look fine to you?" The man was originally a little drunk, but after the fall, the pain caused his drunkenness to dissipate quite a bit. He stood up and shouted at the waiter, pushing him with his other hand. He glared angrily at the green-robed young man who was slowly walking down. "You dare to kick me? Do you know who I am?" The man's tone was sinister as he shouted, his eyes staring at Fingzhou as if he wanted to eat him up. Hearing this, Fingzhou slightly raised the corner of his lips, revealing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Even you don't know who you are, how would I know who you are?" Chapter 2688. Guaxining came to Fingzhou's side and glanced at the man. Young Masterly was the one who made the first move. "Now that you've rolled down the stairs, how can you blame others?" When the man heard this, he glared at Guaxining. After taking a closer look, he couldn't help but frown. "You're Guaxining." He paused and looked at the three people beside him. He asked in a low voice, "Are you going to stand up for the three of them?" "I just think that it's best to let this matter pass. If it gets out of hand, it won't do anyone any good." Guaxining clasped his hands behind his back and looked at him calmly. "Let this matter pass? Ha ha ha. Gua, do you think the Li family is easy to bully? Let me tell you, if this brat doesn't kneel and kowtow to me today, I won't let him off." The man endured the pain and yelled, glaring fiercely at Fingzhou. Guaxining glanced at him, then said to Fingzhou, "It's getting late, let's go back first." Fingzhou nodded slightly and walked forward. The Xia siblings followed. At this moment, the man reached out to stop them. Guaxining pushed him back and warned him coldly. "Young Masterly, you should go back and apply medicine." With that, he left with Fingzhou and the others, heading back to the Guo residence. Seeing that no one dared to stop them, the man gritted his teeth and glared at them. "Good, Guaxining. Let's wait and see." He supported his injured hand with one hand and walked out, heading home. Back at the Guo residence, Guaxining sent them back to their rooms before going to his father. He told his father about what happened outside tonight and said, they plan to leave tomorrow morning. If that's the case, I'll have someone prepare it for him tomorrow morning. Patriarch Guo walked around the courtyard with his hands behind his back. But since they've offended the Li family, I guess we'll have to find some time to deal with them. It was that young Master Li who made the first move. At that time, I saw that if it wasn't for Fengzhou's kick, Brother Xia would have been heavily injured. Guo Xining said. I know. The people of the Li clan have always been unreasonable. This isn't the first time something like this has happened. If it were other clans, it would be one thing, but against our Guo clan, they probably wouldn't dare to offend us. However, there's something I need to tell you. Hearing this, he looked at his father, wondering what was going on. Recently, the Treasure Exchange Pavilion released news that there's a supreme-grade pill that can allow a peak Immortal Sage expert to advance to the late-stage Immortal Venerable realm. You should know that I've been stuck at the peak of the Immortal Sage realm for many years, but the possibility of me breaking through this threshold with my own strength is extremely small. His voice paused, and he walked with his hands behind his back, saying, I heard that this pill has been verified by the Treasury Pavilion. Even if one consumes it, there will be a chance to break through again in the future, and it won't cause any harm to one's cultivation, so I plan to take this pill. After your grandfather heard about it, he decided to personally take a look, so I want to ask him to bring you along. Treasure Exchange Pavilion. Guo Xining was startled. Doesn't that mean we'll be going the same way as Fengzhou's group? There was only one Treasure Exchange Pavilion in this area, and it was in the town where the Xia clan was located. It seemed like they could travel together. Chapter 2689. Hearing this, Guo Xining's eyes flashed. Although he wanted to tell his father that Fengzhou looked approachable, he was actually cold and unapproachable. If the Guo family wanted to recruit him, it would be difficult. However, when the words came to his mouth, he kept them to himself and only said, Yes, I understand. Your brother is not at home, so you have to do your best. This time, when you go out with your grandfather, you have to observe and learn more. He instructed, then let him go back to rest. Guo Xining left the courtyard. He wanted to go to Fengzhou's courtyard and tell them that he would go with them tomorrow, but in the end, he did not. He only went to his grandfather's place and went back to rest. The next morning, when the sky was bright, Guo family head went to Fengzhou's courtyard, followed by a few guards who were carrying trays covered with red cloth. When they entered the courtyard, they saw the puppy-like silver wolf sitting up and looking at them with bloodthirsty eyes. Staring at the silver wolf, the patriarch of the Guo clan didn't dare to be careless. He didn't walk closer and instead smiled, I'm here to send off your master. I also brought some treasures with me. Go and call your master, I'll wait here. Hearing these words, the silver wolf glanced at him and then looked away. It then opened the door with its head and walked into the room. The guards following behind were surprised that their family head would treat a pet like this. Moreover, he stood in the courtyard and did not go too close to the room. It was really strange. Fengzhou in the room had just woken up and washed up. Because she was going back today, she woke up early. When she was about to come out, she heard a noise outside. Not long after, she saw the silver wolf come in. With a flick of her hand, she tossed a medicinal pill to the silver wolf and walked out. When she arrived at the courtyard, she saw Patriarch Guo walking up to her with a smile. Young Master Feng, you're awake. Sorry to disturb you. I have to hurry today, so I woke up early. Fengzhou said and made a gesture of invitation, Guo family head, please sit. I won't sit, I'm here to deliver something. As he spoke, he gestured for the people behind him to come forward and said, These are the gifts my son gave young Master Feng to treat Great Elder. I hope young Master Feng will kindly accept them. He tore off the red cloth and stood to the side to look at Fengzhou, wondering if he was satisfied with these things. Fengjiu saw that the red cloth on the first tray was lifted, revealing a pair of disc-sized black pearls. Seeing such a large pair of black pearls in front of his eyes, Fengjiu was slightly surprised. This is a top-grade black pearl from the deep sea. It has always been one of my treasures. I hope young Master Feng will like it. Patriarch Guo said as he opened the second tray. On it was a precious spiritual medicine. This is a 1,000-year-old sage ginseng. It is said that the efficacy of sage ginseng is 100 times that of ginseng. Just a small piece can bring a dying person back to life. Patriarch Guo looked at Fengjiu and saw a strange look in his eyes. He knew that Fengjiu liked these things. Chapter 2690. The guards placed the trays on the table in the courtyard one by one, and then left first. Fengjiu glanced at the items on the table and smiled. Patriarch Guo, you're exaggerating. She picked up the sage ginseng and looked at it. There was no doubt that it was a 1,000-year-old sage ginseng in the box. Such a thing was indeed precious. It seemed that Patriarch Guo was willing to part with such a good thing as a gift. She looked at Patriarch Guo and said, I like these gifts very much. Patriarch Guo heaved a sigh of relief and smiled, as long as young Master Feng likes them. He smiled and said, oh right, it was already late last night when you came back. There's something I haven't had time to tell you. He looked at Fengjiu and said, my father and Axian Ning will be going with you when you leave today. Patriarch Guo paused. Seeing him look at him in surprise, he smiled, young Master Feng, don't misunderstand. They're going to the Treasure Exchange Tower, so they're going the same way as you. I thought that since it's going the same way, please take care of them. Treasure Exchange Tower. Fengjiu raised his eyebrows. Young Master Feng should have heard of the Treasure Exchange Tower, right? You can exchange treasures there. Actually, we've received news that there's a supreme grade pill in the Treasure Exchange Tower. I won't lie to you, young Master Feng. I've been stuck at the peak of the Sage Immortal stage for many years and haven't been able to break through. This pill is different from the others. It's said that even if you take it, it won't affect your advancement in the future. So, we've decided to do our best to get it. Fengjiu was startled and looked at him strangely. Since it's an exchange item, it shouldn't be that easy to get, right? It's a coincidence. Patriarch Guo smiled and said, other than trading items of equal value, the other party also wants to know about the Stairway of Immortality. Regarding the Stairway of Immortality, my father has been there before. Not many people have been there before, so there shouldn't be any problems. With regards to the medicinal pill that Yi Yun exchanged, they still had some confidence. Fengjiu nodded, I see. All right then. I'll make some preparations. Seeing this, Patriarch Guo left first to make arrangements for their journey. After he left, Fengjiu put the 1,000-year-old sage ginseng back into the box and put it away. Back then, she had obtained a 1,000-year-old ginseng from Moe's. She had often used it as medicine. Later on, when she wanted to look for it again, there were very few ginseng that were at least 1,000 years old. Unexpectedly, the sage ginseng, which was rarer and more precious than ginseng, was actually a 1,000-year-old one. It seemed that the Penglai Immortal Island had more rare spirit herbs than other places. With this 1,000-year purple ginseng, she could find some time to refine some pills to use. After putting away the 1,000-year-old sage ginseng, she picked up one of the black pearls and played with it for a while before putting everything away. These two black pearls could only be used as decorations, or could they be used as medicine? While she was thinking, she heard Shai Yutang's yawn coming from behind her. I just heard a voice. Who is it? Shai Yutang rubbed his eyes and looked at the yard. There was no one except Fengjiu. It's Patriarch Gua. Fingzhou glanced at him and said, "Go wash up. I'll ask someone to prepare some breakfast. Let's hurry up." Chapter 2691. Early in the morning, when the Guo family was busy making arrangements for the journey, a group of people came in aggressively and blocked the Guo family's gate. "Go! Knock on the door." As soon as the leading middle-aged man finished his words, a man stepped forward quickly and knocked on the Guo family's gate. "Open the door. Open the door." The gatekeeper heard the noise and opened the door. He saw a large group of people outside, and all of them had ugly expressions. He couldn't help but be shocked. "Who are you all? What do you want?" The people in front stepped aside, revealing the middle-aged man behind and the man whose hand was bandaged and whose neck was hung with a white gauze. Seeing these two people, the gatekeeper finally recognized them. You are the head of the Li family. Why did the head of the Li family come here?" The head of the Li family snorted and stood with his hands behind his back. He glanced at the old gatekeeper and said, "We are here to take people away today. Go and tell your patriarch to hand him over to me." Hearing this, the old gatekeeper was shocked. He hurriedly waved his hand to call a guard and asked him to go inside to report. The head of the Guo family, who was sitting in the hall with his father, saw the housekeeper come in hurriedly and asked, "What's the matter?" "Family head, old master, the people from the Li family are here. That family head Li brought people to surround our door, saying that we have to hand over the person." The steward reported the situation outside. Hearing this, old Master Gua, who was sitting in the main seat in the hall, frowned and looked at his son, asking, "What are the Li family doing here? Who are they going to hand over?" "Father, you don't know. Last night the head of the Guo family told his father what Guo Xining told him last night. Finally, he said, I sent people to Linglong Pavilion to inquire. The young master of the Li family drank too much and wanted to flirt with the girl of the Xie family. However, he failed and wanted to punch Sha Yutang, so he was kicked down the stairs by Fingzhou." He paused for a moment before continuing, "I originally thought that since the Li family was in the wrong, they wouldn't make a big deal out of it. However, I guess they found out that they weren't from the Guo family, so they dared to come and ask for him." Hearing this, Grandpa Guo shook his head and sighed. "This Li boy is narrow-minded and short-sighted. He really can't compare to his father's style. Father, I'll go take a look," Patriarch Guo said as he stood up. Grandpa Guo took a sip of the tea and said slowly, "Since he came here, he won't give up easily. You deal with him as you see fit. Let's not alarm our guests with this kind of thing." "Yes," Patriarch Guo replied and walked out. When Guo Xining heard the commotion outside the residence, he asked around and learned that the Li family had come looking for him. He paused for a moment, then walked towards the courtyard where Fingzhou and the others were staying. His father would deal with this matter. He would go and see if Fingzhou and the rest were ready. When he arrived at the courtyard and saw that they were about to come out, he was a little surprised. "Why are you all up so early? Have you eaten?" "Yes, we have. We're going to find you," Sha Yutang said and asked, "I heard from Xiao Zhou that Brother Gua and your grandfather would go with us, right?" Chapter 2692. He took out the boxes of pastries from his origin space and handed them to them. "There are a few flavors here. They are all labeled on the packaging." "Thank you, Big Brother Gua." Xie Shirsi took the pastries with a smile. She put some into her own Qinkuan pouch and gave some to Fingzhou. "Xiao Zhou, keep these." "Okay." Fingzhou took the pastries and put them into his origin space. I heard some noise outside the residence. Did that person from last night come looking for you? Fengjiu asked. Guo Xining was slightly taken aback. He looked at him and smiled. I didn't expect you to know about it here. That's right, the Li family came looking for you. But don't worry, my father has already gone to deal with it. I didn't come looking for you because of this. I wanted to bring you to see my grandfather so that we can prepare to leave. Fengjiu thought for a moment and didn't say anything. He just nodded and followed him to the front yard. The silver wolf followed behind them, looking around from time to time. When they reached the front yard and saw that its owner had entered, it followed and sat in the corner of the hall. When they reached the hall, Fengjiu's gaze fell on the old man who was drinking tea in the hall. She saw that his breathing was steady, his face was ruddy, and he was full of energy. His white beard and dignified yet peaceful expression reminded her of her grandfather. Although her grandfather was getting younger, compared to his youthful appearance, the kind old man's voice and appearance were more deeply engraved in her mind. Old Master Guo's gaze swept past the Xia siblings and landed on Feng 9. At first glance, he only felt that this young man in green was very ordinary. His appearance could only be considered delicate, but in the eyes of old Master Guo, who had seen all kinds of handsome men and beautiful women, he could only be described as ordinary and unremarkable. However, it was this unremarkable ordinariness that made him feel that he was extraordinary. If one didn't pay attention to such a young man, it would be easy to overlook him. This wasn't something that ordinary people could do. When he looked at this young man's cultivation, he realized that even he couldn't see through him. He was slightly surprised and stood up, stroking his beard and chuckling. This must be Fengjiu, young Master Feng. I am old Master Guo. If young Master Feng doesn't mind, you can call me old Master Guo. Hearing this, the Xia siblings were shocked. They stood to the side and looked at Fengjiu, then at old Master Guo. An old master of such a high status actually asked Fengjiu to call him old Master Guo. Compared to their astonishment and the slight change in Guo Xining's eyes, Fengjiu's expression was the same as before, showing a gentle smile. She didn't really call him Master Guo, but called him Master Guo. I thought it would be just the two of us. I didn't expect that I could travel with young Master Feng. It won't be boring on the way. The old man stroked his beard and smiled. Then he looked at the Xia siblings and said, when we get there, I will find time to visit you. The Xia siblings were stunned. Xia Shirsi didn't respond, but Shai Yutang knew what it meant. He couldn't help being happy and said, that's great. Thank you for taking care of us here. When we get there, old Master Guo and Brother Guo don't have to find a place to live outside. You can live in my house. Chapter 2693. Their voices paused. Old Master Guo frowned. What's wrong? Why haven't they left yet? Old Master, the people from the Li family have started fighting with our guards. The housekeeper said in a low voice. The head of the Li family is getting out of hand. He said in a low voice. He said to Fengjiu, you guys sit for a while, I'll go take a look. This started because of me, I'll go. Fengjiu said, and turned to leave. Seeing this, old Master Guo paused. Seeing Fengjiu and the others leave, he called for a hidden guard and gave him some instructions, then followed them out. Outside the mansion, more and more people gathered to watch. They all saw the heads of the Li and Guo families arguing about something at the door. These two families had been in the city for over 100 years. Who would have thought that there would be a day when they would fight? But, what was it that made them fight? Hey, do you guys know why the Li family is looking for the Guo family? Why would the head of the Li family bring people here? A man in the crowd asked the person beside him. Hearing this, a man who knew what was going on laughed. What else could it be? Did you see young Master Li? Last night, he drank too much at Ling Long Pavilion and went to flirt with a girl. It is said that the girl had 2 men with her and the second young master of the Guo clan. He failed to flirt with her and was kicked down the stairs. Many people who were eating at Ling Long Pavilion saw it. So that's what happened. Then how could the Li family have the nerve to come here? The first young master of the Li family has never been a good person. Now that something like this has happened, they still have the guts to come here. I heard that the person who kicked the first young master of the Li family down the stairs wasn't from the Guo family. The Li family must have heard about it, and that's why they came to cause trouble. If it was someone from the Guo family who injured him, it probably wouldn't be so serious. That's true. After all, when old Master Li was still in charge, he had a pretty good relationship with old Master Guo. It's just that they gradually grew apart when it came to their son's generation. The surrounding people were discussing, their voices were neither loud nor soft as they reached the ears of the Li and Guo family members. The Guo family head's face sank. He looked at the Li family head and said, I advise you to suppress this matter. It won't do you any good to make it big. What? Your Guo family even wants to protect someone with a different surname. Who is that kid to you? Patriarch Li sneered, clearly not putting his words in his eyes. Do you think the Guo family doesn't have to give me an explanation for injuring my son like this? Patriarch Guo frowned and looked at him without saying a word. It was only when an indifferent and somewhat lazy voice came from behind that he abruptly turned around to look. He saw a green-robed Fengzhou slowly walking over. His clear eyes fell on Patriarch Li, the expression in his eyes inexplicably carrying a dangerous aura. Patriarch Guo instinctively retreated to the side when he saw this scene, and even when he stood, he only stood beside Fengzhou. The sharp and cold look that flashed across his eyes made him shudder. He knew that this Fengzhou was unfathomably dangerous no matter how he looked at it. Only someone like Patriarch Li who was impulsive and didn't care about the consequences would act recklessly. I was the one who injured him. I wonder, what kind of explanation do you want? Chapter 2694. Patriarch Li narrowed his eyes and stared at the young man in green who had walked out. He glanced at him and saw that the young man's strength was only so-so. His face immediately darkened and he harumphed loudly. Humph. The cold harumph carried the coercion of a celestial sage cultivator as it enveloped Fengzhou. The powerful aura and coercion caused the expressions of the surrounding people to change. After all, they could see that the young man in green was only at the foundation establishment stage. How could someone with such strength resist the coercion of a celestial sage cultivator? However, Patriarch Guo, who was standing to the side, saw this and a sneer flashed across his eyes. He took a step back, and at the same time, he reached out to push the Xie siblings back, so that they wouldn't be hurt by the pressure. Feng 9, on the other hand, was still standing there. His figure was straight, his expression was calm, and his posture was casual. She just stood there quietly, as if she didn't feel the pressure enveloping her body. Her clear eyes only lightly fell on the Li family head's body. She didn't hear him speak, so she asked again. Didn't you come here to ask for an explanation? What kind of explanation do you want? Her gaze turned and landed on young Master Li with a smile that did not look like a smile. I didn't know that you could ask for an explanation when you fell down the stairs while drunk and took liberties with a woman. Patriarch Li frowned and stared at Fengzhou with an ugly expression. He could not understand this person in front of him. He had attacked him with coercion, but he did not react at all. This was not right. However, no matter how much he thought about it, he would never have thought that this young man was stronger than him. Thus, He only stared coldly at him and said in a gloomy voice, "What right does a weakling have to speak?" Weakling. Fengjiu raised her eyebrows and softly muttered as if she was thinking about the meaning of this word. After a while, she smiled and looked at Patriarch Li, whose eyes were filled with murderous intent. She said, "Do you believe that I'm a weakling and can make you lie down and unable to stand up? Ha 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 ha. Arrogant child. Today, even if people say that I'm bullying you because you're young, I'll teach you a lesson. I'll let you know the consequences of being arrogant." As his unbridled and arrogant laughter rang out, Patriarch Li's powerful spiritual aura surged. He took a step forward and reached out to grab Fengjiu's neck. Hiss. This Li family had actually attacked that young man. The difference in strength between the two of them is so huge. It's like an adult bullying a child. This is an adult bullying a child. How old is that Patriarch Li? How old does that green-robed youth look? He was probably not as old as his son. The moment he made his move, he wanted to kill his opponent. There's no one else who can do this. Isn't this green-clothed youth a guest of the Guo clan? Why is Patriarch Guo just watching from the side? He probably doesn't want to cause any trouble. After all, the Li family's status in this city is similar to the Guo family's. The surrounding people discussed and looked at the green-clothed youth with some pity. Patriarch Li's first move was a fatal blow. It seemed that the green-clothed youth would die here today. The Xie siblings and Guo Xinning watched this scene from behind and could not help but feel their hearts skip a beat. Although they knew that Fengjiu was not weak, the other party was a patriarch. Could he avoid that fatal blow? Chapter 2695. Just as Patriarch Li sneered and his hand was about to touch Fengjiu's neck, the situation suddenly changed. The sudden change shocked him, and his face turned pale. Fengjiu watched quietly as Patriarch Li's hand that was filled with spiritual energy moved towards her neck. Perhaps in the eyes of others, Patriarch Li's speed was extremely fast. However, in the eyes of a peak immortal emperor like Fengjiu who was only at the immortal sage realm, Patriarch Li's speed was extremely slow. She only took a small step to the side with her left foot when the big hand was about to pinch her. She slightly leaned to the side and easily avoided his hand. At the same time, she raised her hand and clenched it. Her forefingers pressed against the area between the thumb and forefinger of the opponent's wrist, and her thumb pressed against the area below the area between the thumb and forefinger. Just like that, she easily flipped it over without using much strength. The shocked Patriarch Li's face was deathly pale as he let out a miserable scream. Hiss. That shrill and sharp voice suddenly came out of Patriarch Li's mouth. Everyone was shocked, thinking that they had misheard. When the surrounding people looked over, they saw that Patriarch Li's hand was held by the young man in green. Because his hand was twisted outwards, Patriarch Li's body was also in a strange position. The young man in green moved again and lifted his leg to kick Patriarch Li. Patriarch Li's knees bent, and he fell to his knees with a plop. Patriarch Li was easily subdued in a few moves. The crowd widened their eyes in disbelief. Am I seeing things? No, I must be seeing things. Hiss. Oh my God. Where did this freak come from? Could it be that this young man in green is not a young man at all, but an old monster who has regained his youth? How is that possible? The young man's bone age is obvious. He can hide his strength, but he can't hide his bone age, right? Who knows? Perhaps there are some secret techniques or treasures. Otherwise, how could the Li clan's patriarch have fallen here? It seems like Patriarch Guo already knew about it. Look at his face, there's not even the slightest bit of shock. It's obvious that he already knew about the young man's strength. No wonder Patriarch Gua kept persuading Patriarch Li not to make a big deal out of this. So this is the reason. Everyone finally understood why Patriarch Gua had been trying to persuade Patriarch Li earlier. However, Patriarch Li didn't accept his kind intentions. Patriarch. Father. Patriarch. Only then did everyone from the Li family recover from the shock brought about by the scene before them. They slowly exclaimed and were about to run forward. However, at this moment, Patriarch Gua shouted in a deep voice, "Everyone, stop." The aura of an expert surged out, causing everyone to stop in their tracks. All of them widened their eyes in anger and disbelief as they stared ahead. Release my father. Let go of the Patriarch. The Xia siblings stared at Fengzhou with their mouths wide open in disbelief. Seeing him fight with their own eyes, they knew that he was really strong. Even Patriarch Li was no match for him. Among these people, the one who was the most shocked, the most incredulous, and the most embarrassed was undoubtedly Patriarch Li. His face was pale, and his forehead was covered in cold sweat. One of his hands was pinned behind his back by Fengzhou, and the kick to the back of his knee made his entire leg sore and weak. He couldn't even stand up, let alone resist. Chapter 2696. Young Master, please show mercy. An old voice came from the sky with a sigh. As soon as the voice came out, Master Li, who was being held down by Fengzhou, paled. He raised his head in shock and panic to look in the direction of the voice. Unfortunately, he was being held down and couldn't turn his head to look at the sky, but that familiar voice still made him panic. When the people of the Li family heard that voice, they were also startled. When they looked back, they saw a gray-robed old man sitting on a flying contract beast. Behind him were 5 people. When they saw the old man and the 5 people, the people of the Li family were delighted. It's the old master, second master, and several elders. It's grandfather. Grandfather must have come to avenge me. The young master of the Li family said in surprise. He waved his hand in the air, "Grandfather. Grandfather." Only 1 or 2 people were surprised. Why did the old master come out of seclusion? The old master should be in seclusion at this time. Moreover, why did the second master and several elders come? The 2 of them were slightly older, so they thought about things more deeply. Seeing that their old master had come, they felt that this old master wasn't here to stand up for their family head. After all, if he was here to stand up for their family head, then that shout just now would have been a stern shout. For a moment, the 2 of them looked at each other and calmly took a few steps back. The contract beast lowered the Li family's old master to the ground and lowered its body to let the old man down. As soon as the old man came down, the young master of the Li family quickly ran forward. "Grandfather, Before he finished speaking, he saw his grandfather's dignified and fierce gaze sweep over him. The sternness in his grandfather's eyes made him shiver, and he couldn't finish his words. The Li family's old master coldly glanced at him, then walked past him without saying a word and walked towards Fengzhou. He saw the green-robed young man holding his son down on the ground in a half-kneeling position. He saw his son's pale face and lack of strength to resist. He saw his son's panicked and helpless expression when he saw him. Father, why have you come?" The Li family head asked in a trembling voice. He didn't expect that his father, who was in seclusion, would come here and see such a scene. At this moment, he felt an inexplicable sense of panic. Of course, the Li family's old man only coldly looked at him and also opened his mouth to reply. However, the imposing aura of a superior made the surrounding people not dare to speak again. They all quieted down and didn't dare to be impudent again. Old Masterly looked at Fengzhou and sized him up with his wise eyes. It was only a glance before he retracted his gaze and calmed his expression. He cupped his hands and bowed. "Young master, please show mercy and spare my unfilial son's life. I will definitely give young master a satisfactory explanation for offending you." Hearing this, although the surrounding people did not say anything, they all gasped and looked at Fengzhou in shock and astonishment. He didn't expect that old Masterly wasn't here to stand up for his grandson, but to apologize. What ability did this green-robed youth have? How could he make the Li family's old ancestor act like this? For a time, everyone's probing gazes fell on the azure-clothed youth. Chapter 2697. Patriarch. The people who came with Patriarch Li quickly stepped forward and helped him up. Patriarch Li pushed away the people who were supporting him and looked at his father. His lips moved and he was about to speak when he heard his father's dignified and cold voice. From this moment on, Li Qingfeng's position as patriarch is abolished. At the same time, his bloodline will move out of the Li family and establish their own family. As soon as old man Li said this, the surrounding people could not help but look at him in shock. Even Patriarch Li and his son had a look of disbelief on their faces. However, the few people who came with old man Li looked indifferent as if they already knew. The position of patriarch of the Li family will be inherited by my second son, Li Qingqing. As soon as old Master Li's words fell, the surrounding people couldn't help but look at the calm middle-aged man beside old Master Li. In the future, the Li family will have second Master Li as the patriarch. Every dog has its day. Father, I know I was wrong. Father, please give me another chance. Patriarch Li quickly recovered from the shock and quickly stepped forward to kneel down. Old man Li didn't look at him. Instead, he looked at Fengzhou and asked, "Young master, what do you think of this punishment?" However, before Fengzhou could speak, young Master Li recovered from the shock and screamed, "Impossible! How can this be?" He quickly walked in front of old Master Li and said, "Grandfather, this kid kicked me and hurt father. How can you help him and not protect us? We are grandfather's descendants." Old Master Li frowned and bellowed, "Kneel." When the pressure came out, the young Master Li who was still shouting suddenly knelt down. His whole body trembled uncontrollably and he couldn't stand up even if he wanted to. "Apologize to this young master." Old man Li shouted and stared at the two people kneeling in front of him with a sharp gaze. I don't." Young Master Li wanted to refuse but was pulled down by his father. He lowered his head and said, "We apologize." Patriarch Li turned to Fengzhou and said, "Sorry, we were wrong. Young master, please be magnanimous and forgive us." Although he was embarrassed, he had no choice but to say these words. This was not only because of the pressure from his father, but also because after exchanging blows with the green-clothed youth, he knew that the green-clothed youth was very strong. At the very least, the green-clothed youth was stronger than him. Apologize. Patriarch Li's sharp eyes on his son. His heart was burning with anger. If it wasn't for his son, he wouldn't think that young man was easy to bully. Originally, he wanted to suppress the Guo family to raise the Li family. Being stared at by his father, Child Li was startled. Seeing that his grandfather was also staring at him, he couldn't help but glance at Fengzhou. He lowered his head and said, "Sorry, I was wrong." Old Master Li looked at Feng. Seeing that he was silent and didn't speak, he couldn't help but feel a little nervous. Young Master Feng. Chapter 2698. Fengjiu glanced at old Master Gua. After hearing his words, she finally understood why old Master Li was here to apologize. It was because of him. Seeing this, she nodded. All right. Since old Master Gua has said so, I'll let it go. Hearing this, old Master Li breathed a sigh of relief. He stepped forward and thanked old Master Gua. Thank you, young Master Feng. And thank you, old Master Gua. He smiled and nodded at old Master Gua. Your eldest son is really bad. If you had been in seclusion for a few more years, your Li family would have been destroyed by him. Old Master Gua shook his head. Sigh, our family is unfortunate. Old Master Li sighed and said to the two people kneeling on the ground, go back and pack your things. The father and son stood up and left with the others. Only the elders and the middle-aged man stood behind the old man. Old Master Li, I'm going out. I won't be home for a while. I'll find you when I'm back. Old Master Gua said and said to Fengjiu, young Master Feng, we can go now. Hearing this, Fengjiu nodded and glanced at the Xie siblings. The two of them walked quickly to his side. Gua Xining followed behind them, along with a few cultivators to protect them. Old Master Guo raised his hand in the air and a spaceship appeared in midair. He gestured for Fengjiu to board the spaceship. Fengjiu stretched out her hand and the little silver wolf that was squatting by her feet jumped into her arms. With a light tap of her toes, she leaped into the spaceship. The Xie siblings and the rest boarded the ship one after another. Old Master Guo was the last aboard. He looked at Old Master Li and smiled. His words were hard to read. How was it? I didn't lie to you, did I? Old Master Li saluted. The Li family will remember this favor. I'll treat you to a drink when we get back. Ha 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 ha. Old Master Guo laughed and patted him on the shoulder. Then, he jumped into the flying ship and left. After exchanging a few words with Patriarch Guo, Patriarch Li left with a few people behind him. As they left, a middle-aged man standing behind the Patriarch asked with some confusion, Patriarch, what did Patriarch Li mean by that? Patriarch Guo smiled. As he walked back, he said, Father can be said to have helped the Li family avoid a great calamity. What great calamity? Was it because of young Master Feng? The man was confused. Young Master Feng was powerful, but a family with 100 years of history. Why would they be afraid of him? At that time, Fengjiu wanted to kill him. If the old man of the Li clan had come a little later, he would have seen the corpse of the Li clan. The Li clan wouldn't have let the matter rest. However, if they fought with Fengjiu, the Li clan wouldn't have been able to survive. Their foundation would have been shaken. Patriarch Guo smiled and continued, therefore, Father's action can be said to have helped the Li family through a great calamity. If it weren't for Father's friendship with the Li family's old master, he probably wouldn't have leaked the news to him. The man next to him was stunned. What news? Why was he getting more and more confused? Old Master Guo paused and turned to look at him. Looks like you need more experience. How about this? Tomorrow, pack up your things and go to one of the Guo family's businesses as a manager. Chapter 2699. The steward leisurely walked past the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man came back to his senses and hurriedly stepped forward to stop the steward. He anxiously asked, what did the patriarch mean just now? I only asked a few questions. Why did the patriarch want to transfer me out in the end? The steward raised his drooping eyelids and glanced at him, then said, before young Master Feng came out, the patriarch sent someone to the Li family to find Master Li, who was in seclusion. Although I don't know how the patriarch got the secret guard to tell Master Li, I'm certain that the patriarch must have told the secret guard to tell Master Li that his son provoked someone he shouldn't provoke. If it's not handled properly, I'm afraid it'll bring disaster to the Li family. The steward's voice was neither fast nor slow, and he had a calm appearance. Young Master Feng isn't an ordinary person. If Master Li was a step slower, then Patriarch Li would have been dead. If Patriarch Li really died, then the matter would have been serious. At that time, no matter how much the Patriarch Li doesn't want to fight with young Master Feng, he must avenge his son's death. But this would have been troublesome. After all, young Master Feng's strength is unfathomable, and we don't know his background. Who knows if there's a big family behind him? The middle-aged man listened in a daze. Why didn't he think that there were so many crooked things going on? In the aftermath of the battle, even if the Li family can kill young Master Feng, I'm afraid the power and family behind him won't let the Li family go. But if they can't beat young Master Feng, then they'll be killed. This way, the Li family's foundation will be shaken, and a big family will be on the verge of collapse. So, our patriarch helped the Li family avoid a great calamity. The steward glanced at him, who was standing there in a daze, and continued, "So, the information you asked about was this. As a big family, you can't even see through this matter. If you don't understand it, how can you be qualified to stay by the patriarch's side? It's reasonable for the patriarch to transfer you out to gain experience. After all, the patriarch isn't someone as blind as the Li family's patriarch. Otherwise, why would I be the steward and you aren't?" The middle-aged man stared in astonishment as he watched the steward walk away. He couldn't help but take a deep breath and slowly exhaled. He didn't think too deeply about things, and sometimes his brain reacted half a beat slower. After this reminder, he also knew where the problem was. Therefore, he was still holding back his anger. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have asked those questions. At the same time, on the spaceship, Fengjiu had entered a room to cultivate. When the Xie siblings saw him, they went back to cultivate as well. Only a few people from the Guo family were at the bow of the spaceship. Guo Xining poured a cup of tea for his grandfather. He couldn't help but ask curiously, "Grandfather, the Li family's old master is in seclusion. How did you get him to come out?" That old man Li is in seclusion all year round. How can the secret guards go to his seclusion place? I only asked the Dark Guardian to look for old man Li's second son first. His second son's mind isn't something that can be compared to others. With just a few words, he would know what to do. The old master took a sip of tea and smiled, so he brought the secret guards to see old man Li. I only asked the secret guards to tell old man Li that his son provoked someone he shouldn't provoke. If he doesn't want to bring disaster to the whole family, he should quickly come and deal with it. Chapter 2700. No, he only believed half of it. Old Master Guo smiled and said, "Didn't you see him riding a contracted divine beast and bringing a few elders with him?" Guo Xining was slightly stunned. Could it be that he wanted to fight? I know what he's thinking. He wanted to cultivate in seclusion but was disturbed by this matter. If the other party was just a nameless junior, it wouldn't matter if he killed him. At least it would serve as a shock, so he brought a few elders with him. However, he probably didn't expect that his son would be subdued by Fengjiu. Moreover, he didn't even have the strength to resist, which led to the subsequent scene. Old Master Guo looked at Guo Xining and said, "As the head of a family, there are many things to consider. You can't just look at the surface of things. You have to analyze the pros and cons and make the best decision for yourself. Take old man Li for example. He made the right decision at that moment. Not only did he save his son's life, but he also saved his family. Thus, he minimized the damage. It was already the best decision he could have made. Hearing this, Guaxining nodded. His heart trembled. He wasn't groomed to be the next head of the family, so he had little contact with such matters. Very few people told him about it. It wasn't until this moment that he realized that it wasn't so easy to be in a position of power, to be a leader. That was also true. Back in the forest, he couldn't see through things and couldn't understand things. When he returned home and told his father about it, his father had already guessed it before he finished. Thinking about how Fengzhou went into the side room after boarding the spaceship and didn't come out, he was moved. He asked, "Grandfather revealed the news to old Master Li and made him accept our Guo family's favor. Fengzhou, is it because of grandfather's information that he doesn't want to have too much contact with us?" Hearing this, old Master Guo smiled and didn't speak while drinking tea. In the side room, Fengzhou was indeed cultivating. Guaxining was right about one thing. She really didn't want to have too much contact with the Guo family. Old Master Guo asked her to save face, and she did. After all, the matter was handled quite well. However, after this matter, the relationship between the Guo family and the Li family would be greatly improved. It was also because of her. Perhaps she didn't like the scheming Guo family, so she didn't want to have too much contact with them. After returning this time, if she got detailed information about the Ladder of Immortality, she planned to leave in advance and go to that place first. In another side room, brother and sister of the Xia family, who said they were cultivating, were staying in a room and whispering. "Brother, does Xiaojiu not like Brother Guo?" Although Xia Shirsi was naive, she was sensitive and felt something. "You noticed it too." Shai Yutang thought for a moment and said, "He doesn't seem to like them very much. It seems that he doesn't want to have too much to do with them. Otherwise, why would he say that he wants to cultivate as soon as he gets on the spaceship?" "Why? I think Brother Guo is very good." She didn't understand. Hearing this, Shai Yutang suddenly stared at her and said, "I tell you, don't think about him. His family is big and has many people. They are scheming and troublesome. It's better to keep a distance." Xia Shirsi blinked and said strangely, "But I remember you were very happy when you heard that old Master Guo was going to visit us. You even invited them to live in our house." Chapter 2701. He originally thought that the Guo family was a century-old family. If old Master Guo visited them, the main family would be very surprised. Then, if outsiders didn't know, they might think that they were on good terms with the Guo family, which was a good thing for their family. However, after what happened this morning, he became clear about one thing. It was useless to rely on others. Only when one was strong could he be valued and respected by others. "Sister, do you think Xiaojiu is powerful?" he suddenly asked. "Yes. Very powerful," Xia Shirshi said without thinking. Shai Yutang nodded. "Well, so we have to work hard to cultivate and become as powerful as him." He also made up his mind that he must work hard to cultivate and break through as soon as possible after going back. With the spaceship, they returned earlier than expected. In the evening, they arrived outside the city before the sun went down. At this time, in the Xia family, the beautiful woman was crying silently with a sad face. In her mind, there had been no news for so many days, so there must be no news. She couldn't help but blame herself when she thought about what had happened to her children. Xia Yan came out from the outside with a dark face, as if he was full of anger. Seeing his wife's sad face, he suppressed his anger and comforted her. "Madam, don't cry. You haven't been sleeping well these days, and you've been crying like this. Your eyes have been red and swollen for several days. Husband, did you inquire about the child when you went to the Ruan family? The beautiful woman asked with a choked voice. Don't mention it. The Ruan family is really a bad thing. They said that they sent people to look for the child, but there is no news until now. Instead, I don't know what happened in the past 2 days. Their daughter, who was not liked in the family, is said to have some amazing talent and adventure. Her illness, which could not be cured, has been cured. Now the Ruan family is busy looking for teachers and resources for her, and discussing which cultivation sect to let her join. He sat down angrily and said, in my opinion, they didn't try their best to help us find the child. I thought that father was in seclusion, so I didn't want to disturb him. Now it seems that it's impossible. Hearing this, the beautiful woman was even more sad. I'm afraid that even if this matter is reported to the master, he won't be an enemy of the Ruan family for our child who has been lost. Thinking of this, she couldn't help crying more sadly. She blamed herself and said, "It's all my fault. It's all my fault." However, at this time, they didn't know that Xia Shishir ran home first after getting off the spaceship. She hadn't seen her father and mother for so many days, and she missed them very much. As soon as she entered the house, she quickly ran towards the inner courtyard while shouting, "Mother, mother, I'm back." Xia Yan, who was comforting his tearful wife, couldn't help but be startled when he heard this voice. Then, he was overjoyed, it's little Shir's voice, and she quickly stepped forward and hugged her daughter. Were and are. F. S. S. Were. Chapter 2702. Brother and Xiao Zhou are behind me. As soon as I arrived in the city, I ran back quickly. Mother, I missed you so much. You don't know that I was almost eaten by ferocious beasts. I almost couldn't come back to see you. She threw herself into her mother's arms and rubbed against her like a kitten. Xia Yan was relieved when he saw his daughter come back. When he heard that she had been in danger, he couldn't help being worried. But when he saw that his daughter was not injured, he was relieved again. It's good that you're back. He stepped forward and patted his daughter's head. He could finally put down the big stone that had been hanging over his head these days. When the beautiful woman heard that her son and Xiao Zhou were all right, she stopped crying and smiled. Yes, it's good that you're back. As for other things, she would ask in detail later. Not long after, Fengjiu and Sha Yutang also came back, but Old Master Gua and Gua Xining did not come with them. According to Old Master Gua, it was a little abrupt to suddenly come to the door, so they lived in the small courtyard of the Guo family and said that they would visit again when they had time. Sha Yutang, who had seen through the matter, did not ask them to stay, and returned home with Fengjiu. After all, he was still a teenager. Even though he had calmed down a little after going out for a few days, the moment he reached home, he still broke into a happy smile and quickened his pace. In the end, he also ran inside with quick steps. Mother, mother, I'm back. Hearing his son's voice and seeing him running quickly, Xia Yan said with some bitterness, "These two children call me mother after coming home. Am I such a failure as a father? Don't you miss me after being away from home for so many days?" Hearing that, Xia Shirsi giggled and held his hand. "Daddy, I missed you, little Shir missed you. I even brought gifts for all of you." Hearing this, Xia Yan laughed. Well, Xiao Shir is good. I didn't love you in vain." The whole family finally gathered together. Seeing the two children return safely and Fengjiu slowly walking towards them from behind, even though the children didn't say anything, the couple knew that Fengjiu was the reason why the two children were able to return safely. "Master, Madam." Fengzhou stepped forward and bowed. Xiao Zhou, thank you for bringing my children back, the beautiful woman said as she stepped forward and shook Fengzhou's hand gratefully. Fengzhou smiled and didn't say much. He only said, I'll go back to the courtyard to wash up first. All right. Go back and have a good rest, the beautiful woman said as she watched Fengzhou turn and leave. Only then did the couple bring their son and daughter in and ask about what had happened in the past few days. After understanding the whole story, the Xia couple personally went to thank Fengzhou that night. Although they knew that Fengzhou wasn't simple, they didn't expect him to be so complicated. Fengzhou quickly put this matter to the back of his mind because the appointed time with the treasure exchange pavilion was coming. Thus, he went out the next day and went to the treasure exchange pavilion. A top-grade pill attracted people from several nearby cities to compete. On this day, everyone went to the treasure exchange pavilion early in the morning to wait. Although they knew that the owner of the pill would come, they didn't expect that they wouldn't even be able to see that person's face. You're tuning in to the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.